My name is Henry Lawson. I taught American literature for 41 years at Jefferson High School in Kansas City. Maybe you've heard of it, a brick building with ivy on the east wall and a football field that turned to mud every October. I was never a coach, but I was the one who stayed after class when a boy couldn't read Steinbeck, or when a girl came to me shaking because her father drank too much. I wrote letters of recommendation, I drove students home in storms, I gave speeches at graduations. I taught their children how to think, not what to think. And for a time, a long, shining time, I mattered. Now, I sit in a cracked vinyl chair in a hallway that stinks of bleach and silence. The nurse, Cheryl, walks past me every morning without a word. She has kind eyes, but they are never for me. Across the hall, an old man named Gerald screams in his sleep. Nobody comes. Not anymore. I ended up here 6 weeks ago. Or was it 7? It was Mark, my oldest son, who brought me. He used to sit on my shoulders, used to beg me to read Huck Finn before bed. Now he can't look me in the eye. He said it was temporary. Just a few weeks, while they sorted things out. There was something about the house needing repairs, about Lisa, his wife, needing the extra room for a Zoom office. But none of it felt real. Not even the goodbye hug. His arms barely touched me. Cold like a stranger. I asked him once, just once. Did I do something wrong, Mark? He didn't answer. Just glanced at his phone, mumbled something about traffic, and left. That was the last time I saw him. No calls. No visits. No letters. I have a son in Texas too, Daniel. Teaches biology. Got that from me, I suppose. I taught him the scientific method when he was 10 using eggs and vinegar and a glass jar. He used to call me Professor Pop. Haven't heard from him since the Christmas after his mother died. Funny, how people vanish while pretending they're just busy. I still remember the classroom. Room 204. Light would pour through the tall windows in the late afternoons and make the dust dance above the desks. I kept every thank you letter from every student in a wooden box beneath my desk. That box. I asked Mark to bring it when I left. Said I needed something familiar. He promised he would. It never came. Now I have 4 beige walls, a buzzer above the door, and a roommate who drools when he sleeps. They left me here. And still, I wait, like an old book no one reads anymore. But I'm not finished. Not yet. It was raining the day Evelyn died. My wife. 46 years married. 46 autumns. She used to say, Henry, you always notice the season, even when I don't. And I did. That day was October. Gray sky, sharp wind, the kind that whispers secrets between the trees. There were only 12 people at her funeral. 12. And 4 of them were staff from the hospice. Mark stood stiff by the casket, checking his phone like he was waiting for a meeting to start. Daniel didn't make it. Sent flowers. A work emergency, he texted. My granddaughter, Ellie, posted a photo of the casket with the caption. Rest in peace, Grandma Dove. A white dove emoji. As if that made up for not saying goodbye. I stood in the back. I didn't speak. Not one word. I was afraid my voice would break open and never stop spilling. After the service, someone patted my shoulder and said, You're lucky to have your family around you. I didn't respond. Because they weren't around me. They were around her. For the show. For the optics. For the good son mask they'd stitched on with lies and obligation. 3 days later, they started talking about what's next. Not for grief. Not for her memory. For me. Mark said, Dad, we've been thinking maybe it's time to downsize. You know, safety first. That old house is too much for you now. They never said the real thing. We don't want you in our lives anymore. You're inconvenient. You're the last piece of a story we've already rewritten. I looked him straight in the face and asked, Who are you downsizing, me or your guilt? He didn't answer. They left the next morning. A real estate agent showed up the day after. Evelyn's rose garden was still blooming, and they were already listing the house. 2 weeks later, I was at Hollow Pines Senior Living. And let me tell you, there's nothing living about this place. It's where people are shelved like books no one finishes. Quiet hallways. Lukewarm food. Birthday balloons that sag by lunch. Nurses who smile like you're already halfway gone. I used to have a desk covered in student essays. Now I have a plastic tray with pills sorted by color. But here's the thing. I listen. I observe. No one here thinks the old man in room 212 notices much. But I hear the nurses talk about the patients like we're broken clocks. I hear Mark's voice in my memory, calling me old-fashioned, like it was a curse. I even saw Ellie once on TV, giving an interview. She said her grandfather inspired her to study literature. She never even visits. That's the part that stings the most. Not death. Not age. Not even loneliness. It's the lie they tell themselves, that I'm too far gone to see what they've become. But I do. I see it clearly now. And I'm going to teach them one more lesson. My last, and maybe my best. I woke up one morning to the sound of wheels. A cart squeaked down the hallway, its rhythm as predictable as the sunrise. Breakfast, eggs like rubber, toast like cardboard, and orange juice that never tasted like oranges. I watched the tray land on my table. No one looked me in the eye. Not even Tina, the young aide with a nose ring and sad posture. I tried once to ask her about her tattoo, a raven on her forearm, but she just smiled politely and walked away. That morning, I didn't touch the food. Instead, I stared out the window at a tree. A small maple, half dead, planted next to the back fence. It leaned slightly, like it had given up fighting the wind. And I said to it, not out loud, but in my mind. Not yet. I don't know why I thought that. But the words echoed inside me like they belonged. That day, I walked, slowly, down the hallway. I passed the rec room, where a game show blared on TV for no one. I passed Mr. Evans, who used to be a lawyer, now mumbling to himself about his dead brother. And I kept going until I reached the small library. It was barely a room. 4 shelves. A sagging couch. A dusty computer no one touched. But there it was. A book I once taught. To Kill a Mockingbird. My hand shook as I pulled it down. The smell of the paper, old, forgotten, hit me in the chest like a wave. I sat down and opened the first page. I didn't read it. I remembered it. That afternoon, I left a note on the bulletin board in the hallway. Simple, black ink on white paper. Thursday 3 p.m., Book Club, Room 12. For those who remember thinking. I didn't expect anyone to come. But they did. 4 of them. Mrs. Green, who used to be a professor. Gerald, the screamer from across the hall, turns out he was a civil rights lawyer once. A quiet man named James, who didn't say a word but listened with wide, broken eyes. And Tina. The aide. She stood in the back with arms crossed, pretending she was just cleaning. We talked about justice. About memory. About Atticus Finch and the courage to stand when no one stands with you. I felt something shift in the room. And in me. The next week, 7 people came. Tina brought coffee from outside, real coffee. Gerald didn't scream that night. And Mrs. Green cried when she read a passage out loud. People started leaving notes under my door. Could we read Steinbeck next? Do you remember Frost's poetry? I used to write stories. Do you still write, Henry? And the answer was, no. I didn't. Not for a long time. But that night, under the yellow glow of the lamp beside my bed, I took a pen and wrote something on the back of a napkin. Old doesn't mean empty. Discarded isn't the same as finished. People forget. But that doesn't mean they're right. I folded the napkin and kept it in my shirt pocket. Like armor. They still don't call. Mark. Daniel. Ellie. But I've stopped expecting them to. You don't feed a wound by reopening it every day. You let it scar. And then you remember who you were before it bled. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the administrator knocked on my door. A light tap, professional, practiced. Mr. Lawson, she said. You have visitors. My first thought, they're here for someone else. My second, no one visits me. But when I reached the lobby, there they were. Mark. Lisa. Ellie. Mark wore a navy blazer like he was at a board meeting. Lisa had her tablet tucked under her arm. Ellie looked tired, the kind of tired you see in people who live online but feel empty in real life. I stood in front of them without a word. Let the silence stretch. Let them fill it. Mark spoke first. Dad. Hey. We've been meaning to come. It's just, things got hectic. I didn't blink. Let the guilt cook slowly. It always tastes better that way. Lisa smiled, tight, rehearsed. We were talking about maybe bringing you home. Not the old house, of course, but we've been looking at options. Smaller places. Assisted living near us. Ellie said nothing. She scrolled her phone. That's when I realized. They weren't here for me. They were here for them. Guilt. Optics. Maybe even control of what's left of my modest savings. Maybe they thought I'd forgotten. That I'd be so desperate for attention, I'd say yes to anything. So I smiled. Let's talk in the courtyard, I said. The sun was low, painting the brick walls gold. The maple tree was shedding its last leaves. We sat on a wooden bench, the same one where Tina sometimes smoked on her breaks. Mark started with the pitch. It's just, we want you closer. For support. For safety. I nodded. Is that why you didn't call for 4 months? Because I was too far. Lisa interjected, that's not fair. We were grieving too. Really? I said. Because your grief looked a lot like remodeling the kitchen and deleting my number. Ellie finally looked up. Grandpa. No, I cut in, gently. You don't get to say that word if you don't mean it. Her eyes flickered. Just for a second. Something cracked. Then I took out a small folder I'd brought with me. Inside, handwritten notes, photos from the book club, a poem Gerald wrote and asked me to edit, a thank you letter from Tina. I handed it to Mark. What's this? He asked. My life now, I said. Not the one you boxed up with Evelyn's china. This one. The one you didn't ask about. They flipped through the papers like they were seeing me for the first time, and didn't quite know what to make of it. I stood up. You didn't come to help me. You came to clean your conscience. But I'm not yours to manage anymore. I'm not a suitcase. I'm not a burden. Ellie whispered, you're angry. No, I said. I'm awake. They left in silence. No hugs. No promises this time. But that night, I slept better than I had in years. And the next morning, when Tina brought breakfast, she found a copy of Mice and Men on the table with a note. Friday 3 p.m., discuss the American dream. The days began to change after that. Something about saying it, out loud, to their faces, settled the dust inside me. I no longer rehearsed comebacks in my head. I no longer checked the hallway, hoping to see Mark's silhouette. I stopped looking at my phone like it owed me something. Instead, I started teaching again. Not officially, of course. There were no bells, no grades, no chalkboards. But every Friday at 3 p.m., room 12 turned into a different place. Tina brought in extra chairs. James started speaking, barely above a whisper, but it was something. Mrs. Green read Baldwin like she was channeling him. Gerald stopped trembling when he heard his own words read aloud. He cried once. Quietly. No one said anything. We just let him feel it. People I hadn't spoken to in weeks began to appear. A former pharmacist. A retired janitor. A woman who once played cello at Carnegie Hall. One day, a man named Rick, ex-Marine, lost his leg in Iraq, stayed after our discussion on Hemingway and said, "You make me feel like I didn't peak at 22. I looked him in the eye and said, "You didn't. You're still climbing. We all are." That's when I realized, they weren't here for the books. They were here because someone was finally treating them like they weren't already dead. One afternoon, Tina pulled me aside. "They want to cancel your group." I blinked. "Who?" "Admin. They say it's unstructured. Liability concerns. Someone complained Gerald got too emotional. Said it's not therapeutic." I smiled, and it wasn't kind. "They're not wrong," I said. "It's not therapy. It's truth. But truth, it seems, is harder to file under paperwork." So I wrote a letter. Not angry. Not bitter. But sharp. Precise. A letter like I taught my students to write, with rhythm, with restraint, with undeniable logic. I addressed it to the board, to the families, and to one person in particular. Ellie. Because I knew she'd read it. She was an influencer now. Talks about mental health and community healing on her live streams. I'd watched one of them secretly. She quoted Thoreau and didn't even pronounce it right. So I wrote. "The greatest cruelty we offer the old is not forgetting them, it's assuming they have nothing left to teach." I didn't sign it, Dad. I signed it, Henry Lawson, teacher. 3 days later, the group wasn't cancelled. In fact, we got a larger room. Fresh chairs. New books. And an envelope, hand-delivered by Tina. Inside was a note. "Grandpa, I'm sorry. I forgot who you were. Maybe one day you'll let me listen again. Ellie." I folded the note carefully. Put it next to the napkin in my shirt pocket. The armor was getting thicker. People think revenge is loud. A courtroom. A confrontation. A public shaming. But the best revenge is this. Being everything they tried to erase, and more. Some mornings now, I wake up before the nurse knocks. The light spills through the blinds just right, soft, golden, like memory. I sit in the armchair by the window. Not because it's comfortable, it isn't, but because it faces east. I like watching the sun fight its way back into the sky. There's peace in doing the same thing every day on your own terms. That's the part no one tells you about getting old. It's not the pain that breaks you, it's the loss of meaning. But I found mine again. Or maybe it found me. Tina brings me a stack of letters every Friday now. Some are from people I don't know, old students, strangers who read Ellie's blog post, others who heard about the old teacher who refused to go quietly. One letter hit me like a stone to the chest. It was from a girl named Cassandra, a student I taught in '97. I hadn't thought about her in years. She wrote. "You told me I could survive anything if I kept reading. You were right. I read your story. I'm still here because of you." I placed that letter beside Evelyn's photo. For the first time in years, I said her name out loud. Still teaching, Eve. Still not done. The courtyard tree, the one that once looked half dead, bloomed this spring. Tina noticed. She said, "That tree's fighting for its life." I smiled. "No," I said. "It's doing more than that. It's living. Same as us." Ellie came again last week. No camera. No filters. No makeup. Just her. She asked if she could sit in on the Friday group. She didn't speak. Just listened. Cried a little when we read Plath. Afterward, she asked me, "Why didn't you yell at us?" At me. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I answered. "Because I taught literature, Ellie. Not revenge." She smiled, but not with her mouth. She left me with a hug. A real one. Not one of those cold, polite, let's stay in touch hugs. I don't know how much time I have left. No one does. But here's what I do know. I won't die feeling forgotten. Because I remembered myself. I won't die angry. Because anger is a short fire, and I've built a slow, steady warmth. I won't die begging to be seen. Because I've become the mirror, and they saw themselves in me, whether they wanted to or not. So if you ask what the last lesson was, here it is. You can't erase a teacher with silence. You can't bury a life that still echoes. And you can't kill someone who finally learned how to live without needing to be needed. My name is Henry Lawson. I taught until the very end. And I was never anyone's burden. Just their unfinished chapter.
Subscribe and like, and send the video to your friends.